Okay guys, I have the whole house to myself, so I'm going to try to do a lot of work right now. This video is mini backstory. So the other night I stayed up really late trying to make those, well, not trying, I did produce those 2 videos. I actually shot 3 videos and I lost one of them. So I'm redoing, it will be titled, I believe, Slope1a. I have to look and see what I named the other particular file, but this is the introduction to section 4.2, and then there's a part 2 to section 4.2. So again, the part 2 is uploaded, and some particular problems for the end or latter part of 3.1 are produced, but I'm doing part A of section 4.2. So first thing we're going to do is let's give this a title. Sorry if you hear the dogs. So again, we're going to call this slope of line and rate of change. Okay. All right, so we start off with the formula m is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. All right, so you use this formula, and I'm going to tell you when you're given 2 points and you want to find slope. Okay, and I'm going to let you guys capture that. I'm going to go in some detail and give a better explanation for slope, like what is slope. And so here is how I defined it. Okay, or I define it. Slope, it's a relationship. It's the relationship or the address between 2 points on a linear or straight line. Okay. So again, it's the relationship or address between 2 points on a line. So again, and I'm going to do a little sketch. Okay, and let me also say it this way as well. It's how we get from one point to another. Okay, on a line. So that's why it's like an address. How do I get from one point to another? So if I do a little sketch here on the side, disregard the green stuff at the bottom. But if I do a sketch, right, and I'm going to make up these points. So let's say one of the points is it's in quadrant 2. So it's -2, comma 1. So again, I was at the origin. I went 2 to the left. I go 1 up, and boom. Let's say I live there at -2, comma 1. Then I realized that my grandmother, or someone I really care about and love and I want to get to, lives at 3, comma 4. Again, these are made up numbers. So this is 3, comma 4. And so as you can see, if I was to go through these points, there's that linear line. And the question then becomes, you know, how do I get from where I'm positioned to my grandma? So watch what happens, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work the math out for you using the formula. The second thing is we're going to go back to that sketch, and then we're going to look at the rise over run. So if I go here, let me erase this real quick. Erase this out the way. So if I take those 2 points that were given to me, which were again -2, comma 1 and 3, comma 4, and I start to apply my formula. Now remember, I told you I like to make the one on the left 0.1. And again, that's why this is x sub 1, y sub 1, because the -2 is the x coordinate of the first point, and the y is the second coordinate, you know, in that point. So there's your x1 and your y1. This is point number 2. So this is x sub 2, y sub 2. All right. And then we go back to the formula, right? And the formula again says we're going to do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and here we go. So very carefully now, if you want to, as far as like the beginning of everything, to be really thorough, you could just list out, you know, like, hey, x1 is -2, y1 is 1, x2 equals 3, and x I'm sorry, that's a typo, y2, and I'm going to move him to the side, y2 is equal to 4. And then remember I told you in replace of an equal sign you always have that word is. So x is -2, y1 is 1. So that's how I'm going to substitute it into the formula. So y2 again was 4. Don't forget that minus. And then very carefully look for your y1. Well, the y1 is 1 over x2 is our 3 minus, and then your x1 is -2. And when I was doing this growing up, I used to, say like I used to say the whole formula like y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And then when I started plugging in my coordinates or my numbers, I was very careful to say, hey, it's 4 minus 1 and 3 minus -2. And that's how I would write it. And then eventually you memorize the formula and you get consistent in doing and showing your steps. All right, so here's what we got. We got a positive 3/5. And so in this case, m is a positive number, and I'll talk about that in a second. So m is a positive number, and that also means that if my m is positive, notice how that line goes up and to the right. So it has a positive increasing slope. All right, so what we're saying is this is our delta y. This 5 is our delta x. And what do those deltas mean? Well, that means the change, the subtraction between those particular numbers, right? So what we're going to look at now is the address. We got our rise up of 3, and we have a run of 5. And again, if I am a positive 3, then I'm going to rise up 3 spots. And if I'm going to run 5 and it's positive, I'm going to go 5 to the right. So that's the address to get from this point to this point. And let's check and see. So again, if I very carefully pay close attention to this, I'm looking at my y, okay? My y goes on the axes, the y-axis, right? What would I do on y? I go up or I go down. So what I'm saying to you is very carefully, if I was to take a horizontal line, go through 1, take another horizontal line and go through 4, okay, because I'm going through those points because those are the y components of their points, right? So if I say, what's the difference? What's the change between 1 and 4? Well, it's 3, right? So basically from this point, I need to go up 3, okay, up 3. And then the next thing will be that I'm trying to figure out, well, what's happening in my run, the horizontal, right, left to right. So if I draw a line vertically through the -2 and then through the +3, well, now I'm looking at, hey, what's the difference here? You see? So if you go back to -2, how many jumps is it to get to the origin? Well, it's 2 jumps to the left, right? And then how many jumps from the origin to 3? It's 3 jumps. So what's 2 plus 3? 5. And there it is. So what was the change? The change is from this address, I need to go up 3 to get to my grandma's street, and then I need to go down, 5 houses, if that makes sense, okay? So again, that's what slope is. Slope is the relationship or the address from one point to another. So I hope that explanation makes sense to everybody. Okay, hopefully everybody has that. You can pause it, but I'm going to clear the canvas because I have a lot of stuff on there. All right, so let's keep going. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is, let's do one with fractions. So what if I'm using these points here, 2/3, comma 0, -1/6, comma 5. All right, so again, this is point 1 because he's on the left. This is point 2. And there's your x sub 1, y sub 1, x sub 2, y sub 2. Perfect. And there's that formula. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Here we go. So our y2 is 5 minus, and again, if I was you guys, and I wish we were together, but I put my fingers under them too. That's another thing you can do. So I put my 2 fingers, one under the y2, one under the y1, and I tell myself, hey, it's 5 minus 0 over. Then I switch and move my fingers to the x coordinates, and I have -1/6 minus 2/3. I'm just trying to be really thorough in how I explain so everybody understands, okay? Now, the issue now becomes I have these fractions in the denominator, and so as you can see, I don't have the same common denominator for those fractions. But before I get into that, I'm going to change that minus to a plus, and bump back the negative. And then what is the least common multiple of 6 and 3? Well, it's 6, right? So the first fraction already has a 6. So this guy needs to be multiplied by 2 to the bottom and the top because it didn't have a 6. Put a plus and then a minus. Negative 2 times 4 is negative 4 over 3 times 2 is 6. So we've changed that negative 2/3 into negative 4 over 6, which that's its equivalent fraction so that it can have a 6 in the denominator. And now we have 5 divided by, and remember, we leave the 6 the same. Negative 1 plus negative 4 is a negative 5. Okay, now of course this looks strange to you guys, but I told you guys, say what's happening. 5 is being divided by who? Negative 5, 6. So if you want to see it written, more horizontally, we could just say, hey, 5 over 1 is being divided by negative 5 over 6. And that's where we do what? Keep, change, flip. Kentucky chicken fried. So what's going to happen is we have 5 over 1, change that division to multiplication, flip and reciprocate that second fraction, so that becomes 6 over negative 5. Please know that you could have left that negative in the numerator. It doesn't matter, but just for the sake of flipping, I'm just bringing it down. It's the same thing. Now I'm going to multiply across, which is 30 over negative 5, negative 6. That's the slope. Okay, that's the address. So what would we do for our rise over run? So if I'm at 2/3 comma 0 and I plot that point, and then I go to negative 1, 6 comma 5, basically the relationship is going to be look, 6 down because the 6 is negative, and then go 1 to the right. Okay, and so in order to show that to you, I'm going to slowly sketch these really quick off to the side, and let's just see if that's true. So I already know that 2/3 is 0.667, 0.66 repeating. So again, we're at the origin and we're going to go 0.67. So we're going to put a 1. I know right here is 0.5. So let's just say roughly 0.667 is just right behind that 0.5. Okay. And that's just a ballpark estimation. Also realize that the y-coordinate was a 0, so I did not go up or down. Okay. And then next, I need to do negative 1/6. And negative 1/6, if we do our T-bow real quick, I'm going to do some scratch work. Top goes in, bottom is out, 0.0. Bring the decimal up. Bring down our help. I already know it's 1.6, I'm sorry, it's a 0.167, go, right? So minus 6, 4, 0, 0, right, 40, and it goes in there 6 times for 36, and you're going to keep getting a remainder of 4, so that's why it's 0.166 repeating, all right? And also it was negative, so that means I'm going to go to the left. So here's negative 1. And negative 0.1667 is very close to 0. And it also says for me to go 5 up. So let's just say way up here, we'll call this 5. I should have wrote it on the other side. And let's just say a hair over here, this is negative 0.167. So right here, roughly, and right there, those are those 2 points. And if I draw a line, carefully going through there, put arrows at the end. So there is that line. Now in this case, notice that the line is not going up and to the right. It's going where? Down to the right. So that's why you see your M is a negative value. So it has a decreasing slope and it's negative. So it's going to go downward. Positive slopes go up to the right. Negative ones go down to the right. All right, so here we go. Now the question becomes, how do I get from this guy here to this guy here? Now, keep in mind you're dealing with fractions. So basically what it's saying is that, hey, you need to go 1 to the right, 1 to the right, and 6 down. So we would go 1 to the right and 6 places down. Okay, and that should make sense because what was our y-coordinates? Well, our y-coordinates were 5 and 0. 5 and 0. So it should be that this is 5 going down. I'm sorry, yeah, 5 is the difference between here and there. Okay, and then to go from the left to right, that's interesting, is we're at negative 0.1667, and we want to go to where? 0.667, right? So if we take this difference, right, to do the change, so I'm going to take this difference, which means plus, bump back. So when you add this together, you would get what? I'm just going to try this out really fast. 14, 6, 12, 13, carry a 1. Oh, I already got unaligned. Okay, I'm going to ignore the 7. Well, no, I'm not. 13, carry a 1. 13 again, carry a 1. 6, 7, 8.0, negative like that. So the difference, what it seems like, is if I go from here, oops, that negative 0.167 to this 2.33, the difference this way would be this negative 0.63, 0.833. But again, when you do the division of those two, I believe that's what will give you the negative 6. So again, the numbers should work out pretty comfortably on this one. Okay, I'm not going to spend too long on it, but that the math is correct. It's a negative 6 because we have a change in 5, and then a change across the x is that negative. And you know what I realized too, guys, is that negative 0.833, that's the same as negative 5 over 6. Okay, and when you basically divide that 5 by this number, that's where the negative 6 will come out. So I'm just telling you the math becomes just like what we had. See, 5 divided by negative 5 over 6. Negative 5 over 6 is this number that I just did real quick. And when you do the division of those two, basically it is to go 6 down and 1 to the right. So it looks, I know it looks a little weird because you're like, it doesn't line up, but the math is right, okay? Let's go back to whole numbers, just so we leave on a good note.